Good morning. It's morning here where I am. You hear me okay? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. First, it's really an honor to be part of this important initiative. I'm very happy to share with you some information about free public transport in Brazil. My name is Daniel Santini. I'm a master's degree in urban planning, and I've been studying public policies on free public transport as part of my PhD. I work for Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, and I live in São Paulo. Uh, I know a few people here, Jerome. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ellie. It's a pleasure. It's really, really nice to be with this group. And thank you for holding the mic so that we can hear. It's really this kind of detail that makes all the difference. I would like to start by presenting an international perspective. I'm trying to control the slides, but I'm not sure it's going. Let's see. Yeah, I have a bit of delay here.
It's
Maybe,
waiting for you to control it.
Karen, yeah, maybe I just have the next slides. I think it might work better. Can we do it this way? Yeah, that's it. An international perspective. So Brazil is right now the country with the largest number of cities with full fare-free public transports in the world. There is an international research network on the subject, and the data I'm showing here are part of an international survey carried out by my colleague Wojciech Kleblowski, Brussels University. He's really a guy for you to connect also. I think he can contribute a lot with how you are doing. Next slide, please. How was it possible? How things changed and how this Brazil? Yes, they changed. Have just present a book about the job subject, so it's really cool to speak with you today. And the subtitle of the book it's No Turnstile from Utopia to the Fare-Free Public Transport Reality. Next slide, please. First, a bit of background. The concentration of cars and motorcycles on the streets of my country has increased considerable. You can see the numbers here. I will not read all that, but just for you to get an idea of how high was this change. And I guess we are facing this all over the world. When Pearl mentioned that fare-free public transport do not decrease the number of car users, I think we should take care per. It's a good way to look at it, but look at the point that when the researchers from Tallinn, for instance, from Stockholm, looked from Tallinn experience, they did not mention that we have at least decreased this changing process of more and more cars. I think, yes, we must consider an effect of free public transport in this kind of change. Next slide, please. Well, together with this, we have the environmental dimension, and I think I totally agree with all that was present in here. Here in my city, we can see the air that we are breathing. And believe me, you don't want to see the air when you're breathing. We are also facing, last week, we faced the pollution from cars mixed with smoke from burning forests. And that's a result of climate emergency. And the air quality index, which is measured by sensors all around the city, was rated very bad for the first time since 1996. So it's really, really an emergency we are living. Next slide, please. The same time the number of cars increased a lot, the use of public transport is decreasing in a very fast way. In São Paulo, the city where I live, we lost like 1 billion passengers in this decade. So I'm talking about São Paulo, a huge city. In 2013, we had 2.9 billion trips per year, and now in last year we had 2,000 billion trips per year. That's a huge difference, and it's happening all over Brazil. I suggest that you take a look about the numbers in UK also. I guess London with similar issues. Next slide, please. The pandemic has worsened, as you have seen in the graphic, an already existing crisis. In most Brazilian cities, transportation is subsidized by ticket sales. It's different from France, and Jerome can comment on that. The drop in passengers has led to the cycles of decline. We have fewer passengers, less revenue, fewer buses, or higher fares. The model has become unviable. The failure of this model is what opened the way for cities to seek other ways to finance the system, including for free public transport. Next slide, please. Here are the numbers of how it happened. The number of cities has grown considerably in recent years, especially last year. The country has reached 116 cases of full fare-free public transport. I'm speaking only about full fare-free public transport. The population benefiting from it is over 5 million people. And that's another important point that were among the questions that were raised. In the cities that adopted the system, there was a lot of popular support, and the suspension of charges was accompanied by improvements in the system. So instead of decreasing the quality, it increased. Some cities even managed to electrify the bus fleets. The possibility of predicting revenues and not depending on the number of passengers favor investments and planning. That's important for us to consider. We are talking about priorities. I think, just as Simon said in the beginning, we must change priorities. Instead of financing the same thing in mobility, we should think different. Next slide, please. I'm almost finishing. Here, the map of fare-free public transport in Brazil. That's a map that I conduce. I try to look for the cases and I insert them in a map. That's a suggestion for you. Also, organizing information is a powerful way of mobilizing people. Today, most of the cities with fare-free public transport are concentrated in São Paulo, Minas Gerais, and Rio de Janeiro. There is a contagion effect with many cities taking inspiration from neighboring cities. In the last year, not only the number of cases increased, but also the adoption by larger cities. We have now 12 cities with more than 100,000 inhabitants. It's really interesting to look for these and try to learn from those experiences. Next slide, please. Then my last points. In the cities that have implemented... What?
I said 30 seconds left, please.
Okay, in the cities that have implemented it, the fare-free public transport, there are two common effects. First, the increase of the number of passengers. That's the case of Mariana, a small city. I studied my master thesis. Look, the number of passengers, how high it became after the... And second, the increase is mainly in poor areas. Fare-free public transport has enormous potential to reduce social inequalities and guarantee the right to the city for the poorest. Next slide and the last one. We want cities that are more pleasant to live in with less inequality and less pollution for future generations. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So I have 6 minutes. I try to take less than 10. So I'm Jerome Serodio. I'm the spokesperson for the National Coordination of Collectives for Free Public Transport in France. So first, thanks for the invitation, most specifically to Simon and from the Fair Free London organization. Thanks for the people. Oh yeah, it's the Zoom thing. Yeah, sorry. Is it? Yeah, there is still. Yeah. Yeah, but I understand it. Okay. Fine. Oh, it's. Yeah. So what I was saying, yeah. So I was thanking everyone for organizing this. So since 2016, we are a dozen local collectives for the free public transport that are meeting, analyzing, taking action, and comment on the progress and limitation of existing models. For us, the time for half measures is over. It's time for a real change. we reject the opposition between a social urgency and environmental urgency, and we believe that it is possible to live better while preserving the planet. So free public transport is a societal choice where the community decides to guarantee a right. Today, education and healthcare, but tomorrow, public transport. So developing free public transport means transforming the city in a common good, fighting isolation and individualism, encouraging everyone to participate in community affairs, accessing places of work and culture, and opening up neighborhoods and the countryside. So today I'll try to show you the status of free public transport in France and how it's happening, where the money comes from and stuff like that. And so next slide, please. Oh yeah, my bad. So free public transport in France. So a growth since 2000 with various implementation. We had 6 pioneer cities in the 1970s. So we had 4 cities that were in Île-de-France region, so near Paris. And today we can count 33 French networks that have implemented total free public transport. So we have like total free public transport cities that you can see on the map, but we also have like a diverse application of it with partial access to free public transport. Those are on certain conditions. For example, it's limited to specific times, weekends only, or just specific days in the year. Also subject to certain conditions like age, income, when you are young or older, or if you are poor. There are some specific use cases where you can have free public transport. And sometimes it's limited to certain services, like you said earlier in your bus's presentation for shuttles and stuff like that. Somehow they are free. So I just wanted to show you that at the end, the free public transport in France is really a political choice. We have something that is pretty annoying for us because I come from a left-wing parties, but many right-wing local authorities are having free public transport also. So this is a topic that speaks to everyone and not only on the social side for people like us, and mainly us, I think, here. We have 16 local authorities, right-wing majorities that have free public transport, 21 by left-wing and 6 by centrist majorities. And the topic of free public transport is really a local topic because in France, we have something called the cities. So you have a mayor and stuff like that, but you also have metropole. Metropole area is like a combination of multiple cities. And it is at the metropole level that you decide to have free public transport or not. And all the money that goes into the public network comes from, you will see just after, metropole, government, and a part of the commercial revenue, so when you buy tickets and stuff like that. But it's really to show you that it is an important topic. The last 2020 municipal election, we had nearly 110 municipalities with a population of over 20,000 people that had in their program the possibility to have free public transport. So it's something really interesting. So we'll play a little game quickly. On this slide, we have 3 scenarios, A, B, and C. On the left side, it's the coverage rate of operating expenses by commercial revenues, meaning when people buy tickets and stuff like that. And on the right side, the coverage rate of operating expenses by the local authorities. So scenario A is free public transport. You don't have any commercial revenues. Scenario B, you have like 15%, and scenario C, 30%. Raise your hand if you think in France we are the scenario C. Like 30% of the revenues for the public network comes from people like us when you buy tickets. Do you think we are in scenario C or not? Raise your hand if you think so. We have only one guy. Okay. So in France, we are in scenario B. So this is something that shocked me when I came here, and we showed it earlier. Like it's more than 75% in some cases of commercial revenues that are paying for the public network. It's only 14% in France. So to show you on the next slide, the share of commercial revenue represents less than 14% of the total expenses of public transport network in France. 21% for cities with a population over 500,000, and 10% for cities with a population less than 50,000. So on the right, you can see half of it, the network is paid by something called the mobility tax. Mobility tax is paid by all companies in France with more than 11 people working in it. So it's a percentage, a little one. It can be between 2 or 3, depending if you are in either France or not. It's a percentage of all the salaries you are paying to your employees. Oops. Yeah. And so it means that right now you have more than 86% that is paid by local authorities or the tax from the companies. So if you want to have free public transport in France, you just need to find the money for 14% of it and not 75% or 55%. So on the national level for France, it's a really important topic. So I just take a quick example. I have 1 minute, 2 minutes left regarding the city of Dunkerque in the north of France. This is the best example we have in France because it's kind of a big city. And what is good with Dunkerque is that they created a totally new transport network and they directly put it free for everyone. So it's free directly for everyone because cities are built for cars. And when you have the possibility to create a totally new transport network, you need to think it for public transport. And so we saw an increase of 125 increase in ridership compared to 2017, like last year. And so no cards or validation, anyone can access the free public transport. So social effects, elimination of the issue of the non-take of solidarity-based pricing, increased social diversity on board, improved purchasing power amid successive crises, and unexpected emergence of conviviality on board on the network, because you really want to have people wants to take the public transport. It's a really important point. And the last slide, we had a survey made. 70% of surveyed card users who also use the bus reported using public transport more frequently since 2018. And this is the case in all the cities that have implemented free public transport. So thank you.
Yeah, as you can hear, I'm afraid I haven't got a Glaswegian accent. I originally hail from London Borough of Ealing, but I've been living in Glasgow since 2008. And ever since then, I've been campaigning for better public transport. Firstly, with the Bring Back British Rail campaigns, which I set up in 2009, and then more recently with the local Get Glasgow Moving campaign, which launched in 2016. We're a campaign for active public transport London has, where the buses, the trains and the subway are planned and controlled by a public body to work in the public interest. And that's something that's been completely impossible to deliver anywhere outside London since the policy of bus deregulation was implemented in 1986. But today I'm going to be talking about the Free Our City campaign for free public transport, which was set up in 2020. And I have to thank Lisa, who I know is in the room today, Transport for Quality of Life, for first opening my eye to the possibility and also the necessity of free public transport. These two reports were incredibly influential on me. The first one from 2018, the second one from 2019. My awareness of these ideas coincided with being invited to join Glasgow City Council's Climate Emergency Working Group, which was set up around the time that the council declared a climate emergency in May 2019. And I was able to influence the transport policy quite a bit. One of the recommendations published in the report was that an assessment was made for the potential for making the transition to a public transport system that is free to use. So this caught the eye of Jennifer McCary, who is the chair of the Glasgow Trains Council, and she approached Get Glasgow Moving about starting a new campaign specifically for free public transport, bearing in mind that COP26 was on the horizon. It was originally meant to be in autumn 2020. So this campaign was to become Free Our City, and we met up in February 2020. We did a power structure analysis, which was really useful. And we also commissioned a piece of research by Jeff Turner to look at how much it would cost to roll out free buses across Glasgow. And I sent the links to all of these reports to Pearl and Simon, so hopefully they can be circulated. This was launched in March 2020. And then, of course, we all know what happened. We went into the first lockdown and the Free Our City meeting started to look a bit more like this. But we continued to meet every few weeks, and we were really riding high on that Build Back Better feeling that we all had at the start of the pandemic. So setting up the campaign, we commissioned an artist called Marcella Taran to design this beautiful logo for us, and we worked on a manifesto which drew on Jeff's research and also drew on Transport for Quality of Life research as well. And we made plans to organise a big online conference to launch the campaign, where we had international speakers. We had Xavier Duran from Dunkirk, who was from the city, talking about his experience of overseeing the rollout of free public transport. And we had a citizen of Tallinn talking about her experience as a passenger using free public transport. This was very well attended. We had over 100 people, including quite a lot of politicians, Green politicians in particular. And it was live streamed on Facebook, and you can watch it, the archive then. We put on another online event during the second lockdown, putting free buses back on the agenda, which was a kind of town hall meeting where we had representatives of community groups just talking about the issues that they face with public transport at the moment, and what game-changing experience it would be if it was all made free. And that was witnessed by politicians from the three main political parties, who had to then respond at the end to everything that they'd heard. We had representatives from disability groups like DPAC, Speaking Community Council, and many other organisations. So following the election in 2021, the Greens went into coalition with the SNP. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, but I'm going to jump to COP26, because this was an absolute gift for our campaign, because we soon discovered that all the delegates that were coming from around the world were going to be given a free public transport pass, like the one in the photo here. So this showed two things. One, that this is very much a thing that is possible, and also it made a lot of Glaswegians very, very angry. This idea that if they could do it for the delegates, then why can't they do it for us? So we were able to capitalise on this a lot. We got a lot of media coverage during COP on STV News, in Private Eye as well, and in the Glasgow Times. So I just want to finish up with the kind of campaign wins for Free Our City, because several things have followed on from all this intensive activity that we did. So Greens going into coalition with the SNP in August 2021 helped to push forward the policy of free bus passes for under 22. So Scotland now has the most generous concessionary card scheme in the UK. They also announced a Fair Fares review, which was to look at public transport charging across the whole of Scotland. Locally, Greens secured money to fund this scoping study for free public transport. And internationally, if you can call it that, we're very pleased to have inspired the Fare Free London campaign as well. The report that Glasgow City Council did came out this May, and I know the link has been shared to that, and it's been very useful for Fare Free London. Unfortunately, by the time it came out, we had really moved on to our next fight, and that is Better Buses for Strathclyde campaign. It's a region-wide campaign to get our bus network back into public control, part of a network of campaigns across the UK that are doing this, Greater Manchester and Liverpool City region being the furthest along. Because the fact of the matter is, and it's been stated before, that it's much easier and cheaper to deliver free public transport if you own and run the buses yourself. So I just wanted to flag this up, that just before the mayoral elections in May, Sadiq Khan made a pledge that if he won and if Labour won the general election, which of course both happened, he would set up a new publicly owned bus company for London. And if it became a reality, this would make it much, much cheaper for delivering fare free public transport in London. You down in London, we need to be realistic, demand the impossible. I think that's what campaigning for free public transport did. That's what motivated me to start Bring Back British Rail 15 years ago, and it's now becoming a reality. So
Thank you.
Go for it.
It's a pleasure to share experiences with all like-minded activists from across the world. And, the presentations were very nice, which were made earlier. And thank you for having me here. Dear friends, as the discussions which were presented earlier already highlighted, in many instances, some schemes which were implemented by the government, such as the scheme which is implemented here in Karnataka, the state of Karnataka, India, right now, free transport for women, which is called Shakti scheme. Shakti means strength. So the name itself suggests that this is a kind of scheme which is aiming at strengthening women. But many times, most of such schemes were political decisions which were implemented during the election. So the same thing goes here also. But as we see, free transport for women was not a new phenomena in India. Delhi government, the national capital, implemented one such scheme in 2019 itself. And actually, during the publicizing of this scheme, they mentioned that the Delhi had only 11% women in the labor force, and the everyday commutation of women was only 30%, which included both metro and buses. Metro in the sense it is a subway transport. Both included, it was only 30%. So again, here the scheme aimed at bringing women out in the workforce and increasing their mobility, and through which they aimed at strengthening the women. So similarly, it is in another state, which is Tamil Nadu in India. So for India, this scheme was not new. But here, what we see here in this poster is that this time it was an election promise. Not only this Shakti scheme, which is free transport for women, but also all the schemes which were presented along with it, which actually included 2,000 rupees to women and several such other schemes, one for youth and one for workers and everything. This was actually an election promise. Just before the assembly elections of Karnataka in 2023, the Indian National Congress Party promised these schemes, which was actually a very good welcome scheme from the point of view of all women in Karnataka and all those who support women's cause. And although it was a very important economic measure from the point of view of increasing women's participation in employment and other sectors, in other public sectors, and their social participation. So this promised, and it is implemented now after the elections. Once the government was elected, it is implemented. And actually, in Tamil Nadu, it was not universal, and Delhi is easier to implement. But in Karnataka, it had its own set of challenges to face before it was completely implemented in a proper way. But still, it has been a successful scheme in Karnataka so far, and it has helped all the women who come under the scheme. And here we see the comparison between the labor participation rate in Tamil Nadu in comparison to all India average. here it is a huge difference between Tamil Nadu and all India rate. And the studies which have been conducted on the women's participation in this scheme, how women started traveling because of this scheme, and how actually it helped them in their social participation, all studies suggest that one of the important reasons for the increased number was also such schemes which aimed at empowering women. Shakti scheme in Karnataka was started on 11th June 2023. In the first month itself, it saw more than 10 crore rides and 1 billion rides in 5 months, 2 billion rides in 11 months, which was much more than what was expected earlier. And it is actually it is increasing every month, and it has already reached a huge high level of participation, such as 842 crore rupees worth of travel. So it is a huge success in terms of utilizing one such scheme. In 2022-23, the 4 transport corporations, which are regionally divided in Karnataka, had 23,989 buses and operated 21,574 services per day, carrying an average of 8.25 million passengers daily. So as the data indicates, the numbers indicate, it is a huge challenge, huge success. And actually, on an average, over 10 million passengers travel per day till date. So it is, in a sense, utilizing the capacity of the transport to its fullest. Karnataka State Road Transport Commission, which was actually used to reach its 70% of its capacity. Now the buses are running with 90% of the load factor, which in itself talks about the success of the scheme. But it was not really appreciated to the extent which should have been the case, because there were many other factors which affected the implementation of the scheme. One of the criticisms about the scheme was it was rather than representing it as a social empowerment scheme or helping women with their mobility and their participation in the social sector, it was actually largely criticized because women started going on pilgrimages in the very beginning of the implementation of the scheme. But still, it has actually brought a goodwill towards the government. Whatever the media says and whatever the critics say, women of Karnataka, especially the women who are belonging to the lower sections of the society, have appreciated the scheme largely. There are a few issues which were actually needed a kind of mitigation. The crowd increased, but the number of buses did not increase. Similarly, the promise of few buses was not met with, because of which, again, it is a huge negative public opinion which is being built. And the media, which is completely hostile towards the scheme because of the right-wing forces, the media here is by and large, it is totally right-wing. So because of this hostile media, they only projected the negative factors, and the total misogynist comments to some extent actually influenced even the women who used to travel in the bus. We have seen this over the bus, like those women who are already beneficiaries of the scheme could not defend it completely and could not come out all out in support of this scheme. And because of the right-wing campaign in a big way, even before the elections and after the elections, upper middle class and those belonging to the elite class were definitely not happy, because these schemes were considered the appeasement policies by the now ruling government, earlier the opposition party before the elections. appeasement policies towards the minority section of the society and towards the oppressed section of the society, which is most of all the so-called untouchable section, which now is recognized as the rich section. So this was a kind of misplaced blame on the government, which was largely taken up by the right-wing forces, and through social media and the media forces, they have actually reached each household their negative campaign. Despite all these negative issues, it's a what women have got because of this scheme. There is a huge sense of independence now. Savings which have been part of the scheme actually have provided a room for women to spend the money on some other smaller budget expenses of their households. And sense of security and sense of belongingness which has been brought in by the scheme and the popularity of the scheme also, because in a big number women use the public spaces after this, and we can see everywhere till late in the night, even at some rural places, district places, women waiting in the bus stands and other public places for the buses, which in itself shows how streets have been occupied by women because of this scheme. When we see that because of the other counterproductive things such as increasing incidents of rape, increasing incidents of violence against women who were out from their four walls, so-called safety of the four walls, who are outside of that. Despite all such incidences, this scheme actually has been very successful in bringing out women into the public places, and now we can see that there are women in big number everywhere. But from the point of view of activists, what I feel about this, we have conducted a very small survey through an independent media network called EDINA. EDINA survey shows us that in Delhi, when the scheme was implemented, it gained complete support from the public, not only from women, but also from the other public, including men, because it was implemented along with the strengthening of the public education system, strengthening of the public health system, and also the free water and electricity projects, which were very important parts of the daily livelihood issues of the common people, working masses, which was the majority mass base of the Delhi government. But here in Karnataka, that was not the case. So one of the very important issues is all these guarantees, all the 5 schemes in which this Shakti scheme is also included, it has actually to some extent, after the novelty has worn out.
Slide, because we're running out of time. Is this the last slide?
So,
okay, great.
Give me 1 minute, please. So this has actually come out in a quite a negative kind of a publicity, and this actually needs some kind of an attention from the government also. And the second part, and the very important point of this is women were only considered as the beneficiaries of the scheme. They were never consulted before the scheme was implemented. When the manifesto was being prepared, women were not taken into account. Right till date, they are not the stakeholders. They have no role in either envisaging the scheme or implementing it. So this lack of agency which should have been given to women is also actually impacting it in a negative way. So this is all about the scheme of free transport for women in Karnataka. Thank you.